My honor to introduce our speaker for today. Sorry, one second. Okay. Aimee Baron, MD, FAAP, is the founder and executive director of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, a nonprofit organization that utilizes social media to support Jewish individuals and families as they're struggling to have a child. It provides a warm and nurturing space for those going through infertility, pregnancy loss, infant loss, surrogacy, or adoption, in addition to connecting those families to resources in the Jewish community at large. Dr. Baron was formerly the Director of Innovation and Growth at Nechama Comfort and has also worked as an attending pediatrician in the newborn nursery and neonatal intensive care unit at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital before taking leave of absence after her third miscarriage. We're so looking forward to hearing from you today.
Excuse me. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Really wanted to specifically thank Yehudit Sarah for this invitation. And this group is absolutely inspiring. I've had the privilege of being here for a few minutes, and I think this is going to become part of my daily routine if I can fit it in. So thank you for the invitation and the introduction to this group. Before I start, I really just wanted to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because last night at about 1:30 in the morning, I was still awake because of a number of things we had going on in our house previously in the evening. My husband had fallen asleep before he was able to daven Mariv because he wasn't feeling well, then woke up after Chatzos to daven Mariv, walked into the kitchen to wash his hands and said, "I smell gas." And I wasn't in the kitchen at the time. I walked in, and sure enough, there was a smell of gas. We had a gas leak. And if he hadn't been awake at the time, I really shudder to think, chas v'shalom, what could have happened. So I just really want to thank Hashem publicly for the nace that happened in my house early this morning, that we are all here, and I am able to give some words of chizuk to all of you. So with that, I come to you today as someone who, from the outside, I appear as if everything is fine. My family appears as if we have a smiling, bustling family of 7. Kanai Nahara, we have 5 children. And from the outside, it seems as if everything is perfect and we have everything we wanted. I have a daughter who's in college. I have twins who are in 2nd grade, and then everything in between. We are able to contribute to their lives, to our community. We each have busy professional lives. And yet, as we all know, that each of us carry pieces with us that nobody sees and nobody knows when you just have a quick snapshot of someone's simcha, or when you're passing people on the street, you don't know the kind of pain that they carry. The pain that I carry is the pain of secondary infertility and recurrent pregnancy loss. In the period of our fertility journey, during all of those years, I went through 3.5 years where we inexplicably were not able to get pregnant. And then after that miraculously resolved itself, I went on to have 4 second trimester losses in a row over the span of around 3 years. All of those babies were healthy. All of those babies were wanted. They were after my 3rd child. So there was nothing specifically wrong with me in terms of holding a pregnancy. The doctors couldn't find anything. I lost 2 boys and 2 girls, and no one could figure out why. And I was basically beside myself. I was in a tremendous amount of pain, grief, frankly, depression at different points, unable to get out of bed, unable to care for my other children. And it was an experience that I don't wish upon anyone. But each of us go through different pieces in our life. And these are wounds that we carry within us. It's not as if there's a sign that goes on our faces, on our chest. It's not as if we sign our email saying recurrent pregnancy loss survivor. We don't do that. And so I'm here today to talk to you about the kinds of things that you as a community, that we as a community can do in order to make really anyone feel comfortable, but specifically people who you may know are going through some sort of fertility struggles, but sometimes we don't know. And it's something that they carry deep inside without showing the world. So I'm here to give you very specific pointers, do's and don'ts, things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do, things that you can say, things that you should not say, things that you should avoid. Because this kind of pain is one that doesn't go away even after you have children. And just to end off my own story, after all of that period, we did, Baruch Hashem, we were zocha to be able to have a healthy set of twins. Miraculously, I dropped 2 eggs, and I was older. I was 39 at the time. And I got to that ultrasound and I said to my doctor, oh, wonderful. Now there will be 2 babies that die. I'm trying to put you in a place of understanding the kind of pain that people are carrying with them. Baruch Hashem, those 2 babies did make it, and they're my 2nd grade miracles, along with the miracle I had last night. But here now, and I have a document that I can forward to whomever, whether it's, Yehudit Sarah, and she can pass it around, whether there's an email list. I'm happy to do that afterwards. And so you can have an actual tangible item that you can refer back to. But in the meantime, I'd like to take the rest of this time and just walk through a few different pieces, a few different takeaways that you can use in your own lives. So, and I'm happy also to answer questions. I'm happy to have anyone, pose those questions here today, or feel free, you can get my contact information. You can reach out to me by email or through WhatsApp, and I'm happy to answer questions otherwise after we finish this and, on my own time. So the first thing and the most important thing that I'd like to leave with you today, and if you take nothing else away from this talk, this is the piece that I want you to leave with, is, do you know how when all of us are standing around at a kiddush, at a bar mitzvah, at some sort of chesed event, any kind of situation, and we often, we see people we haven't seen before or haven't seen in a while, or you just want to catch up. And this was specifically relevant, after lockdown, when people started coming out of the woodwork and really people started reconnecting with each other again. And so these these questions started coming up, like, how are you? How's everything going? What's happening? Tell me what's going on. Tell me, how's your job? And so how many children do you have now? Did you have any children in the last 2 years? Okay, so this is the piece that I want you to take away. When you ask someone, how many children do you have? Or if it's to a family member, how many children do they have? How many grandchildren do you have? It immediately sets that person up. It sets them in a place where if that person is struggling, or they have someone in their life that's struggling with fertility challenges, whether it's infertility or pregnancy loss, it immediately gives them a pang, immediately, because they don't have the number of kids that they thought they were going to have. And so I urge each of you to change your language. Instead of asking people, how many children do you have? Reframe and leave it open-ended for them and ask them instead, so tell me about your family. Because what then that does is it takes the onus off of them and purposely in terms of pointedly asking that question. And it really, because it's open-ended, it allows them to answer however they want. Maybe that person is single and isn't married yet and feels a specific amount of discomfort when you say you're not sure if they're covering their hair, whatever it is, like, are you married? Are you dating someone? No, just tell me about your family. They can choose to talk about their siblings or their parents or whomever. If someone is divorced, if someone is widowed, whatever the situation is, if someone is separated or they're having marital difficulties, this is not only applicable for people who are having struggles in terms of having children. This is a way to make anyone in your life feel comfortable and allows them to answer in the way that they want, as opposed to you purposely asking things that might be uncomfortable, might be nosy, and might really put them on the spot. So that is, if you walk away with nothing else, walk away with, tell me about your family. That's number one. Now, a couple of do's. When you know that someone is struggling, or if you don't know, as I said, because in many situations, we often do not know. So I think what the kinds of questions I often get asked is, I'm not sure if something's going on. I know they've been married for a long time. Maybe should I ask? Should I say? Should I offer suggestions? Should I just assume, like, I have this really great doctor that my sister used, or I know these herbs are really amazing, or you should speak to my friend because, she's been going through this. The answer is no. If you think that someone might be going through something, you should reach out, but in a gentle, not prying type of way. The genuine, caring concern of, I've been thinking a lot about you lately, and I just want to let you know that I'm here for you. And if you think I can be of help in any way, or you just want me to listen, I just want to let you know I'm always here for you. I love you. I just want to support you. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing with me anything at all now or ever, that's totally okay too. And I'm still gonna, we'll still have Shabbos meals together and swap dessert recipes and all the things. But just know that if you ever need anyone, I'm here for you. And so what that does is, it's not nosy. It doesn't insert yourself into someone's private life. It doesn't offer up advice or suggestions in a situation where you frankly don't know anything about. It just is an offer of friendship. And for anyone who's struggling, that is really the best thing that you can do. That's the first thing. Secondly, if they do share, and if they do let you in, allow them to share their feelings without judgment, and just sit there and listen, not give advice. This goes back to the first thing that I was saying. When people are dealing with something difficult, they're carrying a tremendous amount of pain. They're often feeling a lot of very uncomfortable feelings, like jealousy, like anger, like sadness, depression. They may be carrying lots of other things as well. It is a higher level to be able to say, Ein od milvado, it's all in Hashem's hands. Everything happens for a reason. That is for someone to be able to say about themselves and their own situation. It is not for other people to say to them. Excuse me. What happens is that when someone finally gets to a place where they're opening up and they're sharing with you, what they need is support, they need comfort, and they need validation. They don't need advice. They don't need platitudes of, this happens to lots of people. You're not the only one. They don't need Hashem has a plan. They don't need these other pieces that people often say because they feel uncomfortable holding someone else's pain. And so I urge each of you, when someone does share with you, just sit with it. Things that you can say. That's horrible. Wow. That sucks. Oh my goodness. I wish I could take away your pain. This is just absolutely breaking my heart. I would love to give you a hug. Can I? Is that something that could be helpful? Is there anything that I can do practically to alleviate some of the mundane things in your life so that it takes some things off your plate? Can I run errands for you? Can I make Shabbos? Can I take your kids after school? Can I arrange play dates? Can I go with you to a doctor appointment if that is helpful? Giving practical suggestions to people instead of the, well, just like, let me know. I'm totally here for you. I'm just call me anytime, text me, I'm free. So while that is beautiful and appropriate, the problem is that when someone is in pain, it's often, it's so hard to even think of what those things might be. And in the moment when you actually need something, it's often just easier to get it done yourself. It's an extra added effort that people may not have the emotional fortitude to do, to be able to reach out and say, I need help. And so when you give concrete suggestions of the kinds of things that you might be able to do in the moment when someone shares with you, and then you repeat them, maybe it's on a Thursday, Erev Shabbos, when you know things are particularly stressful, or on a weekly basis, like, hey, you may have a bunch of things going on this week. I have Wednesday. What can I do for you on Wednesday? Like, when you give people practical suggestions, when they're sitting in pain, it's easier for them to take advantage of it. So those are things you can do and can say. Some other practical pieces about things you can do. Include them in your invitations, in your Shabbos meals, in your get-togethers and parties. Include them. Always include them, even if it's a bris, it's a vachnacht, it's an upsharon, whatever it is, even if it's a baby-centered activity. Include them. But then, when or if they say no, they decline, they come late or leave early, don't pass judgment. They're doing what they need to do in order to be able to emotionally deal with whatever that event is. Sometimes it's not a baby-centered event and they just can't manage it because they're too much in pain at that moment. And so the fact that you can be a person for them, that they know they are safe with their feelings and they are safe with whatever decisions and choices they make about their lives, that you will support them, will be an incredible source of comfort for them. Another idea, dropping off things like dropping off meals, small gifts, books, notes, sending texts, anything that you know that they would like, is just another small way of showing that you care, even if they don't actually share anything with you, if they say nothing, but you have an inkling that something's going on. Just the dropping of something. Yeah, I was just thinking about you. I was in that store and I know you love lavender candles and I've never smelled anything so delicious. I'm just dropping it off at your doorstep. That's it. No expectations, but just pieces look, before Shabbos, before Chag, obviously those are times that tend to be even more stressful. But on a random Tuesday, it's always nice to know that someone was thinking about you. So I highly suggest pieces like that as well. Thank you, Ruchi. One or two other ideas, and then we're going to move to the don'ts. These kinds of issues, fertility issues, grief, one of the pieces we haven't touched on is the grief after a loss, whether it's a miscarriage, whether it's a stillbirth, any kind of pregnancy loss, an infant loss. And all of these kinds of pointers obviously apply to any kind of loss that someone has in their life. These kinds of things are complicated. They don't have a quick fix. They can last for weeks, months, or even years. And so I always urge people, often when we hear that someone had a loss, God forbid, everybody is there right away. They're there for the Shiva, they're there sending meals for the initial meal train. And everybody shows up and everyone's like, if you need anything, if you need it, blah, blah, blah. And then, as we all know, because life gets busy and we're on to, unfortunately, the next thing and the next tragedy and the next yantif and the next, we forget about the people who are still sitting with their pain. So the other piece that I urge each of you is don't forget people. Just because it's not on the top of mind anymore for you doesn't mean that it's not on the top of mind for them. Even in a situation after people have gone through a loss and they have another baby, God willing, it is never the case that they forget about the baby that they lost. That is a baby that they will always remember. And sometimes after having that rainbow baby, as in the fertility world, we call the baby that is born alive after a loss a rainbow baby. I know rainbows in Judaism are very complicated, but this is the general fertility space. Often people tend to have their grief reactivated as that baby starts to grow and starts to, go through milestones, because it reminds them of what that other baby did not get a chance to do. So I urge each of you, don't forget about your friends that have gone through loss. Okay. I'm going to speak a little bit more about, I want to touch upon pregnancy announcements before moving to the don'ts, because this is also a piece that people really struggle with. We know, having a pregnancy is a miracle in every possible way. And for people in the world in which I deal, getting pregnant is not easy. And the question I often get is, when you're surrounded by people who are struggling and then you get pregnant, how do you tell the person who is struggling that you now have? And of course, obviously, we know that a pregnancy is not a guarantee that you're holding a baby in your arms in 9 months. But even still, getting to that threshold is so difficult for some people. Or even after someone has had a loss, hearing that someone else is pregnant and they're not anymore is incredibly triggering and painful. So what is the best way to handle a pregnancy announcement to someone who has been sitting in pain or has recently lost, or not even recently, has lost a baby? I always suggest, doing it by text or by email. And this might seem totally counterintuitive to all of you, because you think like, I need to talk to her personally. I need to tell her, I'm so worried about it. I'm worried about her response. I don't know if she's ever going to talk to me again. Like, text is so impersonal, or it's so impersonal. How could I possibly do that? And that's exactly the point. Because it's impersonal and because it gives distance and allows the person who's struggling to receive the news on their own time, on their own timetable, in a space and time where they don't have to fake smile at you. They don't have to pretend that they're so happy for you and then go home and crumble and cry for the next 3 days. This gives them a way to be able to have those natural feelings of difficulty, of jealousy, let's just call it what it is, of sadness and pain. And they can do it in a way that's dignified, and that they don't have to have those fake emotions and smile and put on a show for you. And so we hear pretty much unanimously from people who struggle that the best way to tell someone that you're pregnant is in some sort of a distant way, so that they can process on their own time and then be able to come back to you. And in that notification, it can go something like this. I'm telling you like this specifically because I love you, because I know that this news might be painful, because I don't want you to have to feel that you have to be anything than who you are. We're pregnant, and I am sure that this might be difficult for you as much as you're happy for me. You don't have to let me know you got this message. You don't have to respond. If you need to take a few days, a few weeks, or however long to process this, and you don't want to be in contact with me, I understand, and I love you, and I am here for you always. But I know that even my presence or just being around me might be painful. And so I'm here to do whatever you need to do in order to try to make this as easy as possible for you, knowing that this is inherently not easy. And so you give over this message with warmth, with love, with everything you have inside. And then you respect whatever the person's choices are in terms of how they're going to interact with you going forward. That's pregnancy announcements. One last piece about grief, which I touched on, and then I'll move to the don'ts. Remember, again, as I've told you already, grief does not have a timeline. People can be grieving their babies, as we've talked about, for days, weeks, months, or years later. It is not linear either. You or whomever it is that's going through this can have really great days and feel like, you know what, I'm like really feeling back to myself again. And then all of a sudden you like see an ad on TV, you like are in Target and you thought you were avoiding the baby section, but actually like you see that baby toy just like around the corner, and the waves of emotion just come over you again and again and again. This is very normal. It happens to everyone who has lost something dear to them. And it doesn't mean that you've gone back to square one. It means that this was an important piece in your life, and this was an important time in your life, and that something triggered you, and triggers happen, and triggers are normal. So don't think that when that happens that you've gone back to square one with your grief and that it's going to take all that time and effort to climb out again. Remember also, and this is the last piece for now, I'll say on grief, is that grief is not only for people who've had real losses. And what I mean by that is someone who had a chemical pregnancy We define a chemical pregnancy as someone who's been pregnant only for maybe a couple of days. You might just see that plus sign or the 2 lines on the pregnancy stick. You may have had a blood test that was positive, and then a couple of days later, you get your period. It may be just an early miscarriage. I can't believe I just used it myself, but just an early miscarriage where you were pregnant only for a few weeks. You never felt your baby kick. You didn't know what the gender was. You didn't have names picked out. You didn't start thinking about what your registry list was going to look like. Each of those pregnancies are life. As we know, life starts with conception. We can talk about the halachos of how we can talk about different halachos in terms of if, God forbid, a baby dies, that there are certain things that kick in only if a baby is 40 days old. I'm not addressing any of that right now. What I'm addressing is the emotional piece, that for everyone who has gotten a positive pregnancy test, that is their baby. It's their hopes, their dreams. They've already started thinking and planning 9 months forward. Okay, so in 9 months, it's going to be Pesach. And it means that if we have a baby, that it means I'm going to have to go to my mother and I'm not going to be able to make it and we won't be able to go away. And then we might have to get a new car because I don't think our sedan, because I need to add an extra row and this. And, my grandmother just died. I'd love to name that. People are already dreaming and thinking and planning. It is your job not to judge people for how they're grieving, regardless of how many weeks that pregnancy was. A baby is a baby, is a baby, is a baby for all of these people. And pain is pain, is pain, is pain. Okay. A couple of short, can someone just give me a timer? I think I have about 5 minutes left. Is that correct?
You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now I'm going to give you, I've sprinkled in a few don'ts in the midst of all of that, but I'm going to give you some pointed don'ts here also. Number 1, don't stare pointedly at anyone's stomach ever. I know. We all do this. We naturally do this. We scan a room, we look down, we calculate in our heads how long they've been married, how young or how old their youngest child is, and we do calculations. We all do those calculations. And then we all go from looking someone in the eye to looking down at their stomach and think, I wonder. Does it matter? Does it really matter? No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you were the first one to figure it out before they started telling. It doesn't matter. But what does matter are people's emotions and people's pain. And for people who are dealing with infertility and are going through fertility treatments, for example, all of those shots and all of those medications often can create a physique where you have a bloated stomach, which can give you the appearance of even looking like you're 6 months pregnant when you haven't even gotten to the point of where you can take a pregnancy test. So how much more so for that person who is coming to some event, is coming to your kiddush, is coming to your play date, and is wearing something that looks like it might be maternity because she needs to hide her stomach, because she doesn't want anybody talking about it because it's so bloated, and yet she's not pregnant. And all people can do is whisper and look and talk. I'm begging you, people want to see your eyes. They want to know that you're looking here, not here. We're all guilty of this. I'm guilty of it. And I work on this and I do this work all day long. Try to be mindful of looking at people in the eye. That's the first thing. Number two, again, I already spoke in the beginning. If there's the one thing that you're going to take away from this, you're never again going to ask someone how many children they have or how many grandchildren they have. You're going to say, tell me about your family. Oh, how's Sarah? How's she doing? How's everything going? And what's happening this one? Leave it open-ended. Let them talk, let them share what they want. Don't pointedly ask people questions about their family size. And in addition to that, don't like, so how old is your youngest right now? Because then you're calculating, they're calculating. They know exactly how old their youngest is. And it's painful every single time they remember that if they got pregnant right now, today, it would only be 9 months from now that youngest would be an older sibling. Everyone who's going through this, whether you just had a loss and you're now set back to zero and you have to start the calculations again, or whether you're going through fertility treatments and you haven't even gotten to the point where you're pregnant, every single person is doing those calculations literally on a daily basis. If I got pregnant today, I would be this year old, and my child, if you have children, would be this many years old. Don't ask people, please. And I think this sort of like goes without saying also. I think, people who are in the grandparent role or people in the older generation often tend to isn't it time? Your youngest is, right? So I think all of you are walking away and you know that you're never going to do this. You're never going to gently joke about this with anyone. And I would urge each of you also, look, I don't know the age of the individuals here, but for those of us that are not in the fertility space anymore, and even if you are, if you hear someone who's asking something like that, you can gently say to them, that kind of question is painful or can be painful to people who are struggling. Maybe we can ask it a different way, or maybe it's better just not to ask that. I'm sure, obviously you didn't mean anything by it, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but the onus is also has to be as many talks as I can give and the work that I can do, and all of us in the fertility community can do. The onus is really on each of us to try in a grassroots kind of way to educate people and tell them we can be changing our language. We don't have to say things like this. We don't have to make people feel uncomfortable. So I also give each of you the power, if you feel comfortable, to gently, I don't mean embarrass people. I mean, maybe it's just taking that person aside later on or pulling them away after the conversation is over and say I just want to tell you that I had a loss. And when I was going through it, it was really painful when people asked me that question. So maybe we can all together you'll figure out the language you want to use. But I'm putting the power in each of your hands to try to educate on your own level, in your own circles, so that you can all take this and spread this further. Other things, number 3 or 4, I can't remember where we are right now. The couple who's going through something, or you think might be going through something, or had a loss, don't avoid them. Don't avoid them because it's uncomfortable. People often feel if those of you who have read the Scarlet Letter, people who have gone through things, anyone who's gone through any kind of tragedy, they often feel like they're carrying around this big letter A on their chest, and that people don't know what to say to them. They don't know what to do. They don't know if they should invite them. They just don't know. And people end up avoiding them, ignoring them, crossing the street, going into a different aisle in the supermarket. Don't avoid them. Just smile. If you're not close friends with them and it's just acquaintance and something terrible happened in their life, as you're passing by, smile, and just say, hey, I heard that something happened and I just wanted to let you know how sorry I am. And that's it. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. It doesn't have to be anything. Or if you don't want to say anything, just smile warmly. Just don't avoid people and make them feel like a pariah. I'm going with 5. Don't offer advice. I mentioned this earlier in the talk. Try this doctor, go see my friend. She went through this. She knows exactly how you're feeling. Stop stressing about it because everything is going to be fine. You have other kids. I don't know why you're worried about getting pregnant again or why you're so upset about this loss. You have other children. Why don't you just relax? It's going to be better. Like, go on vacation. Things will get better. Oh, why don't you just, why don't you just adopt? Why don't you just use a surrogate? Why don't you just try? So don't ever use the word just. Just blanket statement. Don't use the word just. But put yourself in this person's shoes. They know exactly what they're going through. They know, and they've been living with their situation for months, maybe even years before you've heard about it. Trust me when I say to you, they have gone to the ends of the earth trying to figure out what to do to make it better. They know about the doctors. They know about the medicines. They know about all the things. Like, I often get people saying to me, but they may not. Okay. So in the moment when they're sharing with you what's happening and what's going on in their lives, that is not the time to offer advice, to tell them what to do, to go on vacation, just adopt, you have other kids, stop grieving, any of those things. That is the time for you to sit with them and hold their pain and validate it. That's it. At some other point, there may be an opening where you may be able to say something like, hey, I just ran across this thing. Are you interested? Do you want to hear? Or like, you're totally covered and you know exactly what you're doing. Give them the power to whether they want to accept it and whether they want to hear about it or not. But your role as the friend, as the confidant, as the person that they're leaning on is never to offer advice. It's to just hold them in their pain. Number 107. Don't compare their situation to anyone else. Oh, you had an early loss. They had a stillbirth. It was a full-term stillbirth. It's they're still grieving. It's horrible. I mean, you should be fine. Like what you had a stillbirth? Oh, do you know I have cancer and my mother has cancer and my dog has cancer? Okay. We don't compare. We sit with people and we hold them in their pain. If people are struggling, we hold them and we say, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. Comparison is never a good idea. And these are just a couple of lines again of things that you should not say. And again, I'm happy to give this handout to anyone. I've obviously, extrapolated on lots of things in this handout, but this gives, if people want this, I'm happy to share it with all of you afterwards. So for infertile couples or people that are dealing with any kind of fertility struggle, don't say, at least you don't have all these sleepless nights taking care of these kids. Or during COVID, like the line we heard so often from so many people was, oh God, well, at least you don't have Zoom school and dinners and this and homework and all of that. You just have yourselves to take care of. Don't say, you can go on vacation whenever you want, wherever you want. I can't because I've got all these things and all these responsibilities. No. People who don't have children or don't have the number of children that they want, also have responsibilities. And often, many of these people are up to their ears in debt, trying to deal with their fertility treatments and the medical procedures and all of the things to try to get them to the point of where you are. And then this other one, which is, right on the heels of the previous, is, look how much you're saving by not having kids right away. Never appropriate to say. If someone has had a loss, a stillbirth, at least you didn't know your baby. This obviously is the comparison to, someone who, God forbid, lost a baby after they were born, a neonatal loss, or someone who dies during childbirth or childhood or later. As we've talked about earlier, the not knowing your baby, while that might be true for every person who just gets that pregnancy test, that positive pregnancy test, they're already hoping and dreaming and planning and thinking and doing. So they might not have known their baby, but they knew their baby. You'll see the baby when Mashiach comes. Okay, but it's kind of a throwaway line and not helpful for people when they're sitting with their grief. Oh, well, that's amazing. You had a loss. Okay, maybe you don't say that's amazing. Well, when people have a loss, well, you now know you can get pregnant, so you'll just get pregnant again and have another baby. Okay, right. You can get pregnant. The miscarriage proved that, but getting pregnant is not so easy. And you can't just snap your fingers and replace a baby. It doesn't work like that. And this is actually, this last one is the piece that's which people say all the time, and they mean so well by it, and it yet is so painful. When someone loses a child, or when someone is going through fertility treatment, secondary infertility, after they've already had children, the line that people say is, well, at least you have other children. Okay, yes, that is true. That person is not in a situation that is like someone who has primary infertility and doesn't have any children. But if you think about this in another perspective, you have two parents in life. If your mother died and your father was still alive, would you ever say to that person, yeah, it's not such a big deal, your father's still alive? You would never do that. In the same way, children don't replace children. We don't say to people, at least you have others. Yes, Baruch Hashem, I do have others, but this was a very wanted baby and pregnancy, and I am allowed to grieve. Last 3 points, and then I'm going to end, and I'm happy to take questions. Last 3 things that you should never say to anyone. Number 1, it's a test from Hashem, and Hashem only tests the people that he loves. No. Just no. Number 2, I know how you feel. Even if you've been through a similar situation, there are no 2 human beings on the face of the planet that know exactly how someone else feels. Yes, obviously, people get a lot of comfort and a lot of chizuk from speaking to people who are in similar situations. That is the power of support groups. That is the power of turning to a trusted friend who you know has had something similar go on in their life. That is the power of the work that I do, where I work on social media, and we're supporting over 13,000 people on Instagram, because people need that validation and they need to know that they're not alone. But when someone is coming to you in their pain and they're sitting with their pain and finally sharing with you, they need support and validation, not, oh yeah, I know how you feel. This is the way I dealt with it. And it's not for you to talk. It's for you to let them talk and let them emote and you to hold them. And lastly, and this sort of ties into all the other pieces that we've spoken about this morning, you should be over it now. No, there is no timeline in grief. There is no timeline that says you've been going through fertility treatments and dealing with the struggle to have a child for X number of years or months, and like you should be used to it by now and blah. No. Everyone has the right to their feelings, their emotions, their pain. Your job is to hold them in that pain. That's it. Thank you. I'm happy, again, to answer any questions. I just want to take a look at the comments because I saw a few. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Hi, Alana. Thank you.
Aimee, can I ask a question?
Sure.
That was just beyond. It was really, it really spoke probably to all of us. And I hope that your message gets out to everyone. My question is to the husbands. Like, I would imagine that they are not as sensitive, and like a male perspective is to do all the wrong things. And how these women deal with, how are we helping these women in terms of their marriages?
Right. So I'll just sort of, I'll address it in a couple different ways. One is that while you're absolutely correct that the general stereotypes are that men are less feeling, men carry this with them in a very different way. They often can put it aside and go on with their lives, while the women are just sitting with it. They're the ones that obviously are physically going through treatments, or they're physically carrying the pregnancy and then have to deal with the aftermath of their bodily changes, their hormonal changes, et cetera, in addition to the, all of the emotions that are swirling after a loss. I can tell you that there are many, many, many men who hold this kind of pain and have difficulty dealing with these kinds of situations in exactly the same way that women do. There are many men that I have worked with and others have worked with who have been in severe depressions after losses, who are have social anxiety and don't want to see people, don't want to go to Minion, don't want to talk to people when they're going through fertility treatments. So I just want to normalize that perspective just for a moment, that while you're absolutely correct that the woman, generally speaking, is the one that carries the majority of this, don't discount the men in it. That's number one. Number two, look, there are, I would say, there are even more men who don't show those emotions. And so that's really the pointed question that you're asking. For those women, we urge all of them to find outside places of support. Because if they know that their husbands can't be that person for them, so that's when the role of a therapist comes in, the role of a support group comes in, the role of a trusted community. I like, people that they know that have been through this, and, like our community, that's when those pieces come in, because the woman is going to need support and she may not be able to get it from her husband. And what a good therapist and a good marriage counselor will say, and we do a lot of programming about this as well, is communication is key within the marriage. It's, I'm feeling this way. I know that you're not feeling this way, but this is where I am, and I need you to support me, and I need you to respect me, and I need you to understand I can't go to the Purim Suda. I can't get up and go to that bris. You're going to have to go instead of me. I may not be able to take care of the kids today or this week or this month. And those lines of communication do need to be open, and the husband needs to at least be aware that this is what's happening with his wife, even if he can't understand why it's happening. But she needs separate outside support if he's unable to provide it for her. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's just such a sad, when I think about it, she's going through so much pain, and her husband, we're at least women and sensitive. So even hearing this, we can, digest a lot of it. And then I imagine to have that in the home where she can't, I wonder if it causes even more problems between the two of them, so it's even, the whole situation makes it 50 times worse, right?
1,000%, 1,000%. Look, I mean, I could quote to you the statistics, but it's not relevant when it's, when people are struggling in their own lives, quoting statistics don't matter.
Right.
But look, the reality of the situation is that any kind of stress, any kind, and specifically the kind of stress like this, produces strain on a marriage. And that is why we always urge people, look, we always urge, and we have lots of conversations about lines of communication being open, talking about your feelings, making sure the other person is aware, because no one, no matter how long you've been married and no matter how well you think the other person knows you, there has yet to be a situation where someone knows how to read someone else's mind. And so you have to communicate what's happening to you and what you're going through, because the other person does not know. But this absolutely, absolutely is the place for therapists, for people, for, a trusted Rav, for outside help, whether it's for just the woman, for just the man, or for couples counseling, to really work through this together if that strain is there and they're just not getting the support that they need.
Amazing. You're doing amazing work, Aimee. Really. Yashikoach.
Thank you. Okay, I want to answer. Someone asked a question. What is the role? Someone asked, what is the role for a mother-in-law? The role for a mother-in-law is exactly all of the things that I said. Look, just because you're the mother-in-law or the mother, the grandmother, doesn't mean that they're going to tell you everything. They may tell you nothing. And you may just see they're not having kids for X amount of time. And so all of the things that I suggested, hey, like, I'm thinking about you. I just want to make your life easier. I'm dropping off this. Would it help if I do that? Like, just being there for them in a way that's supportive and genuine and not pushy and not asking what's going on. That is your role. And the role is also, as I mentioned in the talk, is not to be judgmental and not to sort of rally the troops, the other people in the family, and sort of gang up on them and say, like, oh, I can't believe they're not coming to this and they're not coming to that. And they're not going to come to this vacation and they're not going to come to us for Pesach. And they want to be by themselves again. Why do they want to be by themselves again? I can't understand it. We're all together. It's too hard for them. They don't want to see all the kids running around. They need their own space. Your role is to be supportive and really to run interference when other people in the family start to do those kinds of things and start to say those kinds of things. Your role is to have their back. And then I would say, going even further, if they're asking, if you do know something, if they do let you in, then your role becomes a little bit more even, and it's the supportive without being intrusive and without being too nosy. So, like, what happened at the doctor today? What happened to the doctor tomorrow? What did the doctor say? What did this? Do you want this medic? Like, no. It's, do you have any appointments this week? Can I help you with any of them? Do you need anything? Can I make Shabbos for you? So it's in this, like, more, what's the word I'm looking for? This overarching supportive way of just letting them know that you're there without being nosy and intrusive. That is the role of the mother and the mother-in-law. Any other questions or further question on that? I want to, if somebody has something, but I just want to comment on what I don't want to interrupt. I wanted to comment on what someone wrote in the chat, but if somebody has something, I don't want to interrupt.
Okay, I just want to say it's already 9:15, and we're going to have to close down. But this was so incredibly amazing. I gained a tremendous amount. I know all the women did, to bring to so many different situations in our lives, and especially to this one. So we thank you so much for coming and sharing your story, your pain, and your light to help us bring greater light to our fellow sisters and families and Klal Yisrael.
Thank you. I'm obviously deeply passionate about this work, and it's personal for me. And I do this because I would have wanted people in my life to treat me this way. And I would have wanted a supportive space and a community when I was going through it. And so I created what I would have wanted. And I just hope that these messages resonate. And if anyone has any questions, if I can be of assistance in any way, please reach out. I'm always happy to speak to people.
Thank you so much. Sarah will post your information in our chat, so all the women will have it. So thank you so very much, and wishing everyone